Dokja's first mistake was assuming his advantage was unique. He had the fourth wall, he had character list, he had access to information that should not belong to anyone living inside the apocalypse. But Lee Sungkook made him hesitate. The man's behavior suggested knowledge, but not the same kind of knowledge. When Dokja compared the clues, he realized Sungkook was using something closer to attribute search, not the deeper file-like access Dokja feared. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it only opened a worse question. If Sungkook was not the same as him, then how many different kinds of prophets existed? The tension sharpened when Dokja noticed another man obsessively staring at his phone. In a sealed-off station, during a crisis, that small glowing screen looked more suspicious than any weapon. And when it became clear that the man was connected to a group chat through an unexpected internet signal, Dongmyo Station stopped feeling like a refuge. Dongmyo Station belonged to a strange kind of king. Han Donghoon was young, socially broken, and hidden behind a computer screen. But his domain reached farther than any sword. Through the Dokkaebi channel network, he could build a virtual route through Seoul's blackout. With wide-area internet, comment manipulation, and sound-blocking skills, he turned information itself into territory. Outside Seoul, people still argued online as if the catastrophe were rumor, conspiracy, or entertainment. Inside the dome, those comments could decide morale, panic, and faction loyalty. Han Donghoon had the power to bend that battlefield. But the tragedy was that he had not been acting freely. The prophets had hypnotized him. They could not become the proper representatives themselves, so they used the boy as a puppet. When Dokja finally connected to Han's network, blue electricity crackled around the phone. A message appeared, simple and dangerous. "Who are you?" It was not just a greeting. It was the beginning of an alliance that could change the information war. Behind a sound wave jamming field, the truth finally stepped into the open. A prophet admitted that he was not ordinary, and he knew about Yu Jongyuk's impossible power. Regression, death after death, life after life, a miracle that allowed one man to return no matter how many times the world crushed him. But the prophet's admiration came with a warning. Jongyuk could not face the coming disaster alone. 10 years earlier, certain people had received a revelation, a record of past and future. Dokja understood the meaning before anyone explained it fully. The so-called Book of Revelation was another name for ways of survival. Then came the cruel limitation. The original revelation was damaged. No one among these prophets held it perfectly. They carried fragments, memories, partial scenes, and broken routes. They promised that together, their fragments could create a different regression. But Dokja knew better than anyone. A broken map can still lead people into a trap. The interrogation changed the shape of the threat. A nervous man was ordered to kneel and reveal his attributes, even though Sage's eyes could already see them. That was the point. This was not only about information. It was about submission. The man eventually confessed his role. He was the ninth reader, and his attribute was hypnotist. His suggestion skill had already influenced others. Suddenly, previous betrayals and strange behavior made sense. There were readers hidden among the prophets, each with numbered identities and specialized powers. Then Dokja learned about God Off. It was not a joke or a harmless label. It marked people who had stopped reading the revelation. Some quit because the story was too long. Some lost interest. Some never believed it until the first scenario began. By then, many were already dead. The surviving prophets were not the chosen elite they pretended to be. The prophets were barely holding themselves together. One insult became a blade. One reckless motion became a mere execution. Jung Hee-won's sword flashed through the corridor with enough killing intent to turn a misunderstanding into a corpse. The fight stopped just before disaster, but the aftermath was worse. A man knelt and apologized, and when Dokja tried to read him, character list returned nothing. No record. No safe answer. That blank space confirmed what his instincts already knew. This man was also a prophet, but not one the system wanted to explain easily. Dokja adapted immediately. He spent coins and unlocked hearing enhancement. If the room was full of liars, then the quietest conversations would become the most valuable battlefield. The next revelation hit like a wound reopening. Kim Nam-woon, the delusional demon, was dead. Not because of a random scenario, not because fate demanded it. He had been killed by another prophet. That murderer knew more than the others. He had monopolized hidden scenarios from the beginning, and disrupted plans that should have followed the expected route. Worse, he was believed to be near Chung Muro, impersonating Yu Jonghyuk himself. This changed everything. If someone could wear Jonghyuk's name, seize hidden rewards, and murder key companions, then prophecy was no longer guidance. It was a battlefield of stolen identities. Dokcha finally said the truth the others were afraid to admit. Not all prophets were on the same side. Once Dokcha secured more stations, the blue flag became indigo, and the world responded like a game board accepting a new player. Benefits unlocked. Group chat opened. Territory became communication, and communication became command. But every station he gained revealed the value of the one he lacked. Chongsin Station remained outside his control, and the reason was not simple. A greater force stood behind it, connected to the 12 apostles, a faction of prophets who had read deeper into the true revelation, and intended to use that knowledge for domination. 11 apostles were known. One was missing, and the more the group explained, the more obvious the implication became. The mysterious prophet already moving in the shadows might be the final apostle. Then another name entered the board, the Tyrant King, one of the 7 kings of Seoul, ruler of Chongsin, a rival whose power had bloomed because prophets made mistakes. Freeing Han Dong-hoon was not clean. The hypnosis had to be broken, the boy had to be subdued, and the method looked cruel before its purpose became clear. When the control lifted, Dokcha did not steal his flag. He offered something stranger in this world: friendship. The cost was heavy. Coins were spent on items, trust, and the hermit ruler of shadows. But Dokcha considered it cheap. A king of information was worth more than a pile of currency. Even after the hypnosis ended, Han's social wounds remained. Direct conversation was hard, so the alliance moved through phones, tools, chats, truth mixed with lies, and carefully managed access. When the internet collapsed again, everyone felt the danger immediately. Their strategy depended on one fragile human staying conscious. Then, Han extended wide-area internet to Dokcha's device, breaking through the blackout. A constellation called Shadow Behind the Curtain revealed itself, and even sponsored coins. Han's message was cautious, almost childish, but powerful. He would trust Dokcha once. In a war built on betrayal, once was enough to begin. When violence erupted at Dongmyo, Dokcha did not try to fight everyone. That was amateur thinking. He only needed the station representative. Cut off the head of authority, and the crowd becomes noise. His strike was direct. The representative fell. Dongmyo's flag changed hands. And in the aftermath, the ugliest part of the station's politics came into focus. The prophets had known future events, but they could not become the proper characters who controlled the station. So they hypnotized Han Dong-hoon and used him as their substitute. Dokcha's logic was merciless. If Lee Sung-kook was not the representative, and the existing representative had failed, then there was no reason to leave Dongmyo in their hands. He absorbed the flag. Indigo became brown. Protection deepened. Territory hardened. And because the internet was still unstable, rival prophets could not immediately learn how much stronger he had become. Then the system opened a new kind of authority: behavioral constraints. Dokcha could now impose order on the people under his command. After Dongmyo, Dokcha faced the practical question every ruler eventually faces: what should be done with dangerous people who might still be useful? Lee Sung-kook and Jung Min-sub were not killed. They were absorbed into the Chungmuro group. But survival came with chains. They were forbidden from revealing his identity. They were ordered to obey absolutely. The life constraint activated, and the meaning was brutally simple. If they broke the rule, the system would kill them. Dokcha then demanded the fugitive's mask, an artifact capable of changing a user's appearance at will. In a world where someone was already impersonating Yu Jonghyuk, disguise was not cosmetic. It was strategy. With the mask, Dokcha could move through the night of the prophets under the right face, gather information, and control how others perceived him. Jung Min-sub's profile also updated through character list. Sponsored by the Cursed Gladiator, armed with combat skills, memory enhancement, and a rare light projection attribute, he was not disposable. He was a blade that had almost become an apostle. At Anguk Station, the night of the prophets began. The setting should have felt solemn. Instead, it was noisy, unstable, almost embarrassing. Numbered readers greeted Dokja with reverence, gossip, suspicion, and nervous excitement. The rules of main scenario 4 were clear. Capture the flag. Defend your station's flagpole. Capture another station's flag to absorb authority. If representatives died, control transferred. If the target station, Changsin, was not occupied within 12 days, death awaited the group. To prevent mutual destruction, the prophets had treated certain areas like a demilitarized zone. No one wanted to invade another station too early. But peace built on fear is not peace. It is a pause before someone calculates the advantage of betrayal. Then, number 1168 appeared. Polite, knowledgeable, and unsettling. He had read nearly 50 chapters and remembered events others should not know, including Yu Zhonghyuk's battle with Demon King Asmodeus. Dokja had just met someone whose knowledge approached the dangerous threshold. The so-called secret weapon was not a sword or a cannon. It was a red meteorite, pulsing like something alive. The prophets claimed they had fed it mana for days, preparing it to hatch into a star relic-level weapon by nightfall. Dokja's reaction was not excitement, it was suspicion. The timing was wrong. A meteorite like this belonged to later knowledge that should only be available to those who had read far beyond the others. Someone who had no right to know this had brought a fifth scenario disaster into the fourth. Then the meteorite trembled. The ground shook, fire rose, and cut off escape. A barrier locked the group in place. The fourth scenario had not ended, yet the fifth scenario had begun to bleed through. As the meteorite cracked and molten light poured from its shell, Dokja understood the nightmare. This was not a weapon being prepared for them. It was a trap prepared around them. From the meteorite emerged the lesser dragon Igneal, a fifth-grade fire dragon species. It was not the strongest disaster in existence, but that did not matter. It was far beyond what this stage of the scenario should allow. An intermediate Dokubi appeared, and even the system seemed to strain around the abnormal difficulty. Dokja refused to simply lower the challenge. Instead, he twisted the conditions directly and generated a hidden sub-scenario. United you die, divided you die. The mission was cruelly simple. Hunt or survive Igneal's attack within 20 minutes. The reward was coins, the penalty was death. Hunting was almost impossible, so survival became the only rational route. When Igneal prepared Flame of Destruction, Dokja ordered the group to move clockwise. The first wave of fire proved his reading of the pattern was correct. But the next attack would not be so forgiving. The hidden game revealed its teeth through numbered platforms. A platform was not safe by itself. It required a precise number of people. If the count matched, an absolute shield appeared for 10 seconds. If the count was wrong, the fire would pass through like judgment. Dokja understood the design quickly. This was not a random mechanic. It was a culling system built for people who had stopped reading the revelation. The apostles knew the incomplete readers would panic, miscount, fight for space, and die. Jung Hyewon and Jung Min-seod searched for other platforms. Lee Sung-kook found one, but it only supported 4. The group needed combinations, movement, timing, and trust, all while Igneal's flames reshaped the battlefield. Then the platforms began reforming. Penalties triggered. Hidden pieces reduced future options. Every round made survival narrower, forcing them to solve a puzzle while standing inside a dragon's breath. Number 1168 had seemed useful because he remembered what others forgot. He spoke of Demon King Asmodeus and the second turn with calm familiarity, nudging Dokja towards scenes that existed beyond the ordinary prophet's reading range. That was when the danger became clear. His memory was not just good, his access was deeper. His confidence came from belonging to the faction that had weaponized the revelation. With a smile, number 1168 revealed himself as the fifth apostle. The title changed the air around him. He was not a survivor seeking guidance. He was an infiltrator standing openly in the middle of the trap. And the strange puzzle-like phrase that surfaced nearby hinted at something even larger. The perspective of this world itself was being played with. The casualty numbers were brutal. Roughly 3/4 of the prophets were already gone. The people who once believed they could exploit the future had been eaten by the present. One survivor revealed his preparation, the cyan ice pill, a rare elixir made from hunting an elemental species near Gongso Station. It created an icy aura that could endure the dragon's heat for 30 minutes. But the detail that mattered was not the item itself. It was the count. 5 people had the same aura. That meant another faction had invested serious resources into this hunt. Dokja could not pretend this was a solo problem. He needed Junghyuk's cooperation. Refusal meant death, even in the best-case scenario. The dragon was not only a monster now, it was a negotiation tactic. Then came the message designed to cut deeper than any flame. Dongyil Station, the home base Dokja had fought to secure, had fallen. The enemy faction had not merely raided a station, they claimed control over 10 stations and announced that they had completed the ruler's path. That meant they had crossed the same threshold Dokja was chasing, maybe even before him. Their leader waited at Chungmuro's flag. It was not an invitation, it was a declaration that Dokja's territory, allies, and reputation were now under direct attack. For the first time in this sequence of victories, the board tilted against him. The enemy had not just matched his strategy, they had moved while he was forced to survive somewhere else. The next secret was worse than enemy territory. It concerned the identity of the ruler. The ruler was not simply another powerful survivor. He was the only person said to have read the complete revelation, the entire story of past and future. To the other prophets, that made him absolute. To Dokja, it made him terrifying. But complete knowledge carried a scar, a stigma, something forgotten, ignored, or deliberately buried. The ruler hated being described as someone who had got off, which meant the phrase touched a truth more sensitive than pride. Then Dokja was told to step onto a hidden piece. Jung Hee-won and the others were ordered to stay still no matter what happened. The moment his foot touched the trigger, the story opened another locked door, and Dokja realized there was another reader who had finished the novel completely. Some people ran from death. Others treated death like a reset button. In the chaos around Anguk, one reckless voice questioned whether anomalies from this regression would remain after everything started over. The thought was dangerous because it revealed how warped the prophets had become. When people believe time can be restarted, they begin gambling with lives that are not theirs. But Dokja's focus locked onto the real objective, Anguk Station's flagpole. With fire raging and Igneal's attack bearing down, he struck the ground with enough force to crack the platform. The system responded. Anguk Station was occupied. The list of controlled stations expanded to 10. Chungmuro, Myeongdong, Dongdaemun History and Culture Park, Dongdaemun, Dongmyo, Sindang, Cheonggu, Yaksu, Sinseildong, and Anguk. The brown flag increased in value. The ruler's path was cleared. Exhausted, battered, and surrounded by disaster, Dokja had seized the exact milestone his enemies were using to threaten him. After clearing the ruler's path, Dokja chose a title that seemed almost absurd in this brutal world. King of No Killing. Against a fire dragon, against apostles, against factions willing to hypnotize children and sacrifice prophets, choosing a title built around not killing looked like weakness. But Dokja understood something the others did not. In this world, titles are not slogans. They are rules waiting for the right moment. Igneal attacked. His external reinforcement suit took the blast, cracked, and collapsed. Durability dropped to nothing. Flames swallowed him. His allies screamed for him to dodge, but he stood inside the fire as if testing the shape of the rule he had just claimed. Then the cold system message appeared. Yu Jung-hyuk has died. For one breath, the battlefield froze, and then the privilege activated. King of No Killing. The story did not end with death. It ended with a new law entering the battlefield.